Today we are going to use Microsoft Access to create a database to store information for our imaginary juice company. We want to record information about different types of juice, including the name of the juice, the price of the juice per bottle, where the juice came from, and a taste value that we have ranked on a scale of 1 to 5. 5 being the best tasting juice like strawberry juice, and 1 being awful broccoli juice. So here on the main screen in Access, we're going to click on Blank Database, and at the pane on the right-hand side, you'll see that it's going to create a database called Database1, but that's a horrible name for a database, so we're going to call it Juice. The file extension for Juice for this database is ACCDB, and that's the that's the new file format in Office 2007 for data. I'm going to actually click on the Browse button, and that's going to allow me to choose a specific location. So I'm going to save this into my home directory, which is on your iDrive, and I'm going into my CP102 folder, and maybe you might want to create a folder called Access1. And I'm going to actually call this Juice, but instead of a .accdb file format, I'm going to click on this down pointing arrow in the Save As Type file box, and I'm going to choose the 2002-2003 format at the top of this list, which is the MDB file format. This is the format used in older versions of Office, so we might as well just use that as a sample. I'm going to click OK, and that will create a database called juice.mdb in the CP102 folder in our folder called Access1. So now I can actually click Create, and it's going to create that create that database for us. And we see this screen where we're able to start entering data. We're not going to enter data right away, but this screen in Access is going to allow you to type information into the table that we want to create. But we want to design the table first because we know the fields we're going to use. So in the top left-hand corner, just under the Office button or underneath the File menu, you'll see the Design button. And it says View right now, but you'll see that the button has an eraser, or rather a pencil with some rulers on it. And if I just click on it, I'll switch into Design View, and it's going to ask me for the name of the table. And instead of Table 1, we're going to call it Juice. So I'm creating a table called Juice inside the database called Juice. The tables and the queries and all the other things that we're going to work with are all going to be objects inside of our database, and that database is going to be one file that sits on our hard drive. So we're typing the word juice, I click OK, and now the juice table has been saved, and it switched us into the design view. So now I'm in design view. I'm just going to go back to that design button at the top that said view, and now instead of the pencil with the rulers on it, it's showing a kind of like a table with headers and headings and columns. So if I click on the button just underneath that, you'll see it says the word view with a little down pointing arrow. You can see that there's a datasheet view, which would be the option that I would choose if I just clicked on the button. I have pivot table view, I have pivot chart view, and I also have design view. So I'm currently in design view, and I can switch into datasheet view, and I'm just going to click on the pencil again, and it brings me back into design view, and that's where we're going to stay. So this is where we want to make the design of our table. Automatically, Access creates a field called ID, and that field has a data type called auto number, and we see that there's a field for description. Now, as you see as I move into these different sections on the screen, the top half of the screen is where we have different fields that we're going to create, and at the bottom we have a list of field properties. Beside the field properties section, there's a little box. And right now, since I have my cursor in the description field, this little box tells us that the field description is optional. It helps you describe the field and is also displayed on the status bar when you select this field on a form. And then it says press F1 for help on descriptions. So you might know by now that if you press F1 in any computer program, then you get the help screen. And Access does this one better. If I press F1 right now, I'll get help on descriptions. And if I move over to the data type field, then that square in the lower right-hand corner tells me some information about data types. And if I press F1, I'll actually get help on different data types. So the help within Access is very contextual. So when you press F1, you'll get help on the item that you're working on right now. I'm going to leave the ID field, and that'll be the ID that, it'll be a number that uniquely identifies each type of juice that we're going to be using. I'm going to move into the second field underneath ID, and I can type the name of the next field we're going to create. So thinking back on the design of my database, I know that I'm going to want to create a field called juice name. I'm going to press Tab, and I brought to the data type column. And now the data type by default is set to text. And if I just click on that little down pointing arrow, I can see a number of different data types. So I'm going to choose text. And I look down at the bottom of the screen where I find the different field properties. The field size for text by default is 255 characters. That's the maximum width of the fields. But if I left that at 255, then every time I had a juice record, its name would always take up 255 characters or 255 bytes of data on the screen or on the computer. That's memory and also hard drive space. But since the word apple only takes up 5, I know I'm never going to have a juice with 200 or so characters. So I'm going to pick a reasonable name, maybe 25 characters is appropriate field size for the name of our juice. I can move into the next field. I'm going to move up from properties back into the field right beside text, and it's the description for the juice name. And this can just be the name of the juice. And that's a descriptive field explaining what this field called juice name is going to represent. If I press tab, I move down to the next field below juice name, and this next field is going to be price. I type in the word price and I press tab. Now I can choose a different data type, and since this is going to be dollar values, it'll be currency. Now when I choose currency, there are some other field properties here, and I don't get to choose the size of the field for currency values, but that's fine. I'm going to move over to description, and I want to make sure that this description says the price per bottle. Because we don't want to have any confusion of the data that's entered. We don't want some people entering the price per case, and we don't want other people entering the price per bottle. So by setting this description field, it'll help anybody who's entering data just check and say, oh, it has to be price per bottle. Now I can move to the next field below that. So we have price. We want taste. Taste is going to be a number field, actually. So if I look at the list of different options, we have number. And there is a field size called long integer, but we're not going to explain too much about that right now. We'll just leave that the way it is. And the taste value is a value between 1 and 5, and we'll say inclusive. So people know that they can put in the words, or they can put in values of 1 and 5. Down to the next field, we have taste, and this is country. Now the country field is actually going to be text, and the description is the country of origin. And if I look down at field size, I'm actually going to make this this country of origin. I'm going to say that we'll store 30 characters for the country that will be the country of origin. In the next database lesson, we'll be using a different structure for the table, and we're going to change the size of a country, but I'll explain that in the next video. For now, we'll just have a field size that contains, holds about 30 characters. Now we have the ID field for our juice to uniquely identify it. We have the name of the juice, the price, the taste, and the country that it came from. Now, right up at the top, beside ID, you'll see that the ID field has a little gold key beside it, because the ID field will be our primary key. So beside primary, if I look at the top of the screen, there is a little primary key button which designates the selected field as the primary key. I could remove the primary key, and now this particular table doesn't have a primary key anymore, and I could choose a different field, but I'll just make sure that the ID field again has the primary key on it, and that completes the setup for this particular table. So I've created this table. I'm going to close the juice table now. And it says, do I want to save the changes to the juice table to the design? And I say yes. And now I'm brought back to the main access screen. On the left-hand side, I see that I'm looking at all tables. And I see that this is the juice table, and it's just a table called juice. I do want to point out in this little pane on the left-hand side, it's possible that you could close it completely by closing and open the shutter bar. But if I click on the little black downward pointing arrow beside the word that says all tables, then I have the ability to view by different categories or by object types. So right now the category, it says tables and related views, but I'm going to choose object type. This is probably the way I'd want most of you to look at your objects, because it'll list all the tables, then all the queries, then all the reports, and any other objects by object type. So that's probably one way you'll want to look at your data. So we've created our data, and if I double click, we've created our table. If I double click on the juice table, it opens up in Datasheet view, and now I can start entering data. But hold on there, cowboy. Don't start entering any data now. We're going to go back into the Datasheet view, and while we're in Datasheet now, we're going to go back into the design view, and we're going to control how people can enter data so that we have solid data, good data with good integrity. So we're going to make sure that we have good data integrity, and that'll be in the next video.